Imagine this. What if I told you that there was a saint who didn't fight demons with shouting, holy water, or dramatic exorcisms, but with laughter? What if I told you that hell itself was once humiliated by a joke? Before we begin this dark and unsettling story, make sure to subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell so you won't miss the next parts of this series. And while you're watching, please leave a comment. Even something as simple as "I'm watching," so I can know how far our videos are reaching and which country you're watching from. That would be a huge help to this channel. Now, let's begin. This is not a cute saint story. This is not a soft, inspirational tale. This is the dark, hidden battle of a man who learned that pride feeds demons and humility starves them to death. Saint Philip Neri was born in Florence, Italy, in the year 1515, a time when Europe was burning, not just with political chaos, but with spiritual decay. The church was wounded. Rome itself, the heart of Christianity, was crawling with corruption, pride, and hidden sin. Demons did not need to hide in such a world. They thrived in it. Philip grew up intelligent, joyful, and unusually observant. While other children were drawn to power, influence, or wealth, Philip was disturbed by how easily people surrendered their souls for applause. Even as a young man, he noticed something unsettling. Evil did not always arrive roaring. Sometimes it arrived smiling. As a teenager, Philip was sent to live with a wealthy relative who intended to make him an heir. Money, status, comfort, everything was prepared for him. But something inside Philip began to rot, not physically, but spiritually. He felt suffocated. He later described this period as being surrounded by noise, but starved of God. One night, alone in prayer, Philip felt a crushing heaviness in his chest. He believed at first it was illness, but then came the thoughts, subtle, mocking whispers telling him that holiness was a lie, that joy was foolish, that humility was weakness. These were not loud voices. They were clever, reasonable, tempting. Philip fled. He abandoned wealth, inheritance, and future security, walking away with almost nothing. He went to Rome, not knowing that Rome was already watching him. Rome in the 1500s was not holy. It was dangerous. Behind church walls were ambition, lust, and pride. Possessions were not rare. They were whispered about. Priests avoided certain houses. Confessors spoke in coded language. Something dark lingered in the air of the eternal city. Philip lived as a layman at first, sleeping little, praying long hours, often in the catacombs, ancient burial tunnels beneath Rome. These were not symbolic places. These were places where the early Christians hid, bled, and died. And Philip felt watched. In the silence of the catacombs, he experienced something terrifying yet transforming. One night, while praying alone, Philip felt a sudden burning in his chest, as if his heart were being physically expanded. Later doctors would confirm that his ribs were permanently altered. His heart had literally enlarged. But with spiritual fire came spiritual attention. Dark disturbances began to follow him. Sudden laughter in empty rooms. Shadows where no candles burned. Thoughts mocking his joy, telling him that holiness must be serious, severe, joyless. Philip's response? He laughed, not nervously, not fearfully. He laughed with deliberate humility. And that laughter enraged something unseen. Philip eventually became a priest, but unlike others, he refused titles, power, and prestige. He dressed poorly on purpose. He made jokes at his own expense. He deliberately acted foolish so that pride would never find a home in him. People thought he was harmless. Demons did not. Reports began to circulate quietly. A troubled man, known for violent fits and blasphemous speech, was brought to Philip. The man was restrained. His eyes rolled unnaturally. His voice shifted between tones. Priests before Philip had failed. Philip entered the room, smiling. He did not shout. He did not demand silence. He looked at the man, laughed softly, and said something shocking. "So, is this the best hell can do?" The possessed man screamed. Witnesses said the voice that came out of him was not human. It howled with rage, not at authority, but at mockery. Philip then calmly said, still smiling, "In the name of Christ, leave. You're embarrassing yourself." And just like that, the man collapsed. No convulsions, no theatrics. The demon fled. The room fell silent. Philip helped the man stand, as if nothing unusual had happened. Word spread, but Philip hated attention. He warned people never to glorify him. "If you praise me," he said, "you invite the devil back." That was the secret. Pride opens doors. Humility slams them shut. But hell would not forget the man who laughed at it. And in the darkness, something began to plan. After the first public deliverance, the one where a demon fled not from shouting but from humiliation, something shifted in the unseen world. Saint Philip Neri noticed it immediately. The air around him felt heavier. Nights became restless. Prayer, once sweet and overflowing with joy, now carried interruptions, sudden distractions, intrusive thoughts, and moments of deep spiritual dryness. These were not random. Philip recognized the pattern. He once told a close companion, "When the devil cannot frighten you, he will try to bore you. When he cannot bore you, he will try to make you proud." And pride was the battlefield hell chose. People began to praise Philip excessively. They called him the joyful saint, the holy fool, the terror of demons. Crowds followed him. Confessions multiplied. Miracles were whispered about in Roman streets. To most saints, this would be a temptation. To Philip, it was a warning siren. Demons could not defeat him through fear, so they tried to inflate him. One night, after a long day of hearing confessions, Philip knelt alone in his room. As he prayed, he felt an overwhelming sense of spiritual greatness descend upon him. Thoughts whispering that he was chosen, special, above others. The sensation was intoxicating. Philip froze. He knew that voice. Without hesitation, he stood up, walked to the mirror, and loudly mocked himself. "Philip, you're dust. Beautiful dust, but still dust." Then he burst out laughing, fell to his knees, and begged God to humiliate him publicly if necessary. That night, something growled in the darkness. The attacks became more direct. Strange disturbances followed Philip when he traveled. Candles would extinguish themselves during prayer. Sudden foul odors filled chapels with no source. Once, while preaching about humility, a violent tremor shook the room, knocking objects from shelves. The people panicked. Philip simply smiled and said, "Relax. Someone doesn't like today's lesson." But behind the humor was exhaustion. Demons did not merely want to stop Philip. They wanted to break his joy. Several possessed individuals were brought to him over the years. One case, darker than the rest, involved a young man who had practiced occult rituals in secret. When Philip entered the room, the man began to laugh hysterically. A deep, mocking voice emerged, taunting Philip by name, revealing private struggles, moments of doubt, even childhood memories no one else knew. Witnesses expected Philip to recoil. Instead, Philip clapped his hands and laughed louder. "You went through all that trouble just to tell me things I already confessed," he said calmly. "You're really wasting your time." The demon shrieked. Philip then did something shocking. He knelt, not before the possessed man, but before God, and prayed silently. No commands, no rituals, just humility. Moments later, the young man collapsed, freed. Afterward, Philip warned those present never to imitate him. "This is not a technique," he said. "It is surrender. Without humility, laughter is useless." Hell was furious. As Philip's reputation spread, so did the counterattacks. Demons began targeting people around him, disciples, penitents, even innocent bystanders, to isolate him emotionally. Some accused him of heresy. Others claimed his joy was irreverent. Rumors spread that he was unstable, dangerous, too informal. Philip accepted every insult gladly. In fact, he seemed to enjoy being misunderstood. But the darkest test came one night when Philip was completely alone. No crowds, no possessed souls, no witnesses, only him and the silence. As he prayed, the room suddenly grew cold. A presence filled the space, heavy, oppressive, mocking. Philip felt the familiar attempt to crush his joy, to suffocate his spirit. Thoughts flooded his mind. "You're ridiculous. You're a joke. No one takes holiness seriously because of you." For the first time in years, Philip felt the sting of discouragement. Tears filled his eyes. Then he smiled. Out loud, he said, "If you want seriousness, go tempt the proud. I belong to Christ." The presence vanished. Philip later wrote that this was one of the most dangerous moments of his life, not because of fear, but because joy itself had been targeted. He realized then that demons hate joy rooted in humility because it reminds them of what they lost forever. From that point on, Philip intensified his mission. He formed the Oratory, a community focused on prayer, confession, and spiritual joy, not rigid severity. He believed that laughter, when purified by humility, was a weapon hell could not predict. And demons proved him right. Another possessed man was brought, this one violent, foaming at the mouth, restrained by several men. The demon screamed blasphemies, mocking Christ. Philip approached, sighed, and said gently, "You're making too much noise." He laughed. Then, with calm authority, he commanded the demon to leave. It obeyed. The witnesses were shaken. Some expected flames, chants, or force. Instead, they saw humility dismantle hell. But unknown to them, the final confrontation was approaching, one that would test Philip not through possession or mockery, but through spiritual loneliness and physical collapse. Because when demons cannot win openly, they wait. There comes a moment in every true spiritual battle when noise disappears. No screams, no possessions, no dramatic confrontations, only silence. For Saint Philip Neri, this silence became more terrifying than any demon he had ever mocked. By the time he reached his later years, Philip's body was weakening. His heart, already enlarged from that mystical encounter years earlier, often caused him severe pain. Doctors warned him to rest. His friends begged him to slow down. Rome depended on him now. The oratory had grown. Souls were lining up for confession. And yet, he felt alone. The laughter was still there on the outside. Inside, something was fading. Philip began experiencing long stretches of spiritual dryness. Prayer felt empty. The joy that once flowed effortlessly now required effort. He would kneel for hours, forcing himself to smile, forcing himself to trust, while feeling absolutely nothing in return. And this was exactly where hell wanted him. Demons know that when fear fails and pride fails, discouragement is the final weapon. One night, as Philip lay in bed, unable to sleep from chest pain, a thought entered his mind, cold, calculated, and deadly. What if your joy was fake? What if you were just entertaining people? What if heaven never asked for laughter at all? Philip did not hear a voice. He felt a weight, a heaviness pressing down on his soul, making holiness feel pointless, making laughter feel childish, making humility feel foolish. This was not temptation. This was oppression. He later admitted to a close companion that during this period, he was more afraid than during any demonic encounter. When the devil is loud, you can recognize him, Philip said. When he is quiet, you start doubting yourself. For weeks, Philip stopped feeling God's presence. He continued preaching, continued joking, continued hearing confessions. But every night, he cried alone. Then came the dream. In the dream, Philip saw himself standing in a vast, empty church. The pews were filled, not with people, but with shadows. He walked toward the altar, and behind it stood a figure cloaked in darkness. The figure spoke calmly, almost kindly. "You fought us with laughter," it said. "Now fight us without it." Philip woke up shaking. He knew what this meant. Hell was not trying to possess him. Hell was trying to strip him of his weapon. From that day on, Philip made a terrifying decision. He would continue laughing even when it hurt, even when he felt nothing, even when joy felt dead. This was not denial. This was defiance. As his health worsened, the attacks intensified. Several witnesses recorded strange occurrences around Philip during this time. Objects moving, sudden chills, unexplained noises during prayer. But Philip never acknowledged them publicly. Instead, he began doing something unexpected. He embraced humiliation even more deeply. He wore mismatched clothes. He deliberately arrived late to important gatherings. He allowed others to correct him publicly, even when he was right. When praised, he deflected with jokes. When insulted, he thanked the person. Demons hate being ignored, but they hate being outplayed even more. One evening, a woman known to be deeply tormented, suffering violent spiritual afflictions, was brought to Philip. The demon within her refused to manifest. No screams, no violence, just a chilling stillness. Philip approached and suddenly felt the same suffocating heaviness he had felt during his darkest nights. The demon was hiding. Philip laughed softly. "I know you're there," he said gently, "but I'm tired and you're boring me." The woman convulsed. A scream erupted, not of rage, but of frustration. The demon revealed itself, shrieking that Philip's joy was a lie. Philip knelt and whispered, "Even if it is, It belongs to God. The demon fled. Afterward, Philip collapsed. This time, it wasn't spiritual exhaustion. It was physical. Philip's heart condition worsened rapidly. He suffered severe pain, difficulty breathing, and episodes where he thought he might die. Doctors urged complete rest. Philip obeyed, reluctantly. During this forced stillness, the darkness returned stronger than before. No laughter, no distractions, only pain and silence. Philip could no longer fight by example. He could only endure. This was hell's final test. Can you remain humble when you are useless? Philip spent days unable to pray aloud. He simply whispered one sentence over and over. Lord, keep me little. And something broke. Not Philip. The oppression. One night, during prayer, Philip felt warmth. Not overwhelming joy, but peace. Quiet, gentle, unassuming. He realized then that joy was never the weapon. Humility was. Laughter was only its sound. By the time Philip regained strength, he was changed. Softer, quieter, more terrifying to demons than ever. Because now, he didn't need to laugh. His very presence unsettled them. In his final years, Saint Philip Neri no longer fought demons the way people expected. There were no more dramatic confrontations, no public deliverances, no loud laughter echoing through Roman streets. And yet, hell was more uneasy than ever. Those closest to Philip noticed a strange change. He spoke less, joked less, laughed less. But when he looked at you, it felt as if he saw straight through your soul, not with judgment, but with clarity. People would enter his room confident, proud, self-assured, and leave shaken, humbled, sometimes in tears. Demons avoided him. Those who dealt with possessions noticed it. When Philip entered a house, manifestations stopped. Oppression lifted without words. The enemy that once screamed at his jokes now withdrew in silence. Why? Because Philip had become what hell fears most, a man with nothing left to lose. One of Philip's last known encounters with spiritual darkness happened quietly. A priest came to him late at night, shaken, pale, trembling. He confessed that he had been suffering from relentless demonic harassment, visions, whispers, crushing despair. The priest expected instructions, prayers, maybe even commands. Philip listened. Then he smiled faintly and said, "Sleep, eat well, pray simply, and don't take yourself so seriously." The priest hesitated. "That's it." Philip nodded. "That's it. The devil feeds on attention. Starve him." Days later, the priest returned, free. Philip never claimed credit. In fact, he warned his community that the devil's greatest victory is convincing people that holiness must be dramatic. Noise, Philip said, belongs to pride. God prefers silence. And hell cannot stand silence filled with humility. As death approached, Philip's body deteriorated rapidly. His heart condition worsened. Breathing became painful. Speaking exhausted him. Those around him feared the end was near. But Philip was not afraid. Witnesses recorded that in his final days, strange peace filled his room. No disturbances, no shadows, no attacks. It was as if something had retreated completely. Hell had already lost. On the night of his death, May 26, 1595, Philip lay quietly in bed. He received the sacraments calmly. When asked how he felt, he answered softly, "I am content." Then, with barely a whisper, he smiled. And he died. No struggle, no fear. No final confrontation, just peace. After his death, Rome mourned, but hell remembered. Stories spread rapidly. Formerly possessed individuals claimed their torment ended permanently after praying through Philip's intercession. Places where he once prayed were said to feel lighter, calmer. Exorcists would later mention his name during difficult cases, not as a ritual, but as a reminder. A reminder that demons can be defeated without theatrics, without shouting, without pride. Saint Philip Neri proved something terrifying to the kingdom of darkness. You don't need to overpower demons. You don't need to outsmart them. You don't need to fear them. You only need to remain small. Because pride gives demons a voice, and humility leaves them nothing to say. So if you ever feel overwhelmed by darkness, temptation, or spiritual noise, remember this saint. Not because he laughed at demons, but because he refused to become important enough for them to fight properly. That was his last laugh.